with about a week left to cut rosters down to that 53-man roster. There are predictions galore all across YouTube, but why go anywhere else except for the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast? I'm sure nothing but positive reviews in such a negative process to end the preseason here. Who are the Browns going to cut? Drew, Mr. Positivity, let's go to you first here. Who do you have as the big surprises here that the Browns?
I have them cutting Cade York because he's been terrible, Ryan. I know that's not what you want to hear. I know that's not what our brand is here. I know that that's certainly not what I want to lead off saying here, but there is no way you can look at this individual and think we have a lot of confidence in our kicker, not when there is a perfectly capable free agent kicker named Robbie Gould, who's out there, who has made kicks in the playoffs, important pressure-packed kicks. Yes, he's 40 years old. No, he doesn't have the leg strength that Cade York has, but he still had plenty of touchbacks last year. He was responsible for the kickoffs for San Francisco. So he is a better kicker this year. And you make this move for this season and you worry about the next 15 years next year. I understand that's going to be unpopular. Maybe I don't know, but there's no way you can keep Cade York based on what we have seen. So I have them pursuing a free agent kicker. They have made some restructuring in cap space. That's almost certainly to give them some rollover cap to eat into. They're $52 million over the projected cap next year. They have $35 million in rollover potential. So that's almost certainly going to be sort of saved for next season. But I think you have to take a little bit of that and give Robbie Gould $2-3 million fully guaranteed. Come in here, save our season, cut Cade York. He has been so bad. So that's the big sort of surprise cut that I have. I think we have a graphic. We'll get to this in a little bit. On the positive side, I also have, here we go. So on the sort of the positive side, and we're talking about cuts, but I actually have this organization finally sort of moving on from some of their draft picks. If you look at the wide receiver sort of columns there, I have 6. I think that's the number. There's some hints out there that it might be 7. I feel like that's a lot of wide receivers to keep, especially for this group based on what we've seen in the past. But I have Jalen Darden and Austin Watkins both making the team. I have Jalen Darden over Jakeem Grant. I have Austin Watkins over players like David Bell and Marquise Goodwin. These are draft picks that this organization has made. Certainly they're cutting number 10, Anthony Schwartz. That is 7 more days, team, 7 more days till he's gone. But I have them admitting some mistakes at that position. I also have the same thing at defensive tackle. So if you look at the defensive tackle spot, I actually have them keeping 5. I know that's might be 1 high, but I think they really like to rotate names along that defensive line. You'll notice I have 10 defensive linemen. I think there's going to be a heavy rotation to keep guys fresh this year. And I actually have Maurice Hurst over both Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai. Those are 2 more draft picks that I think they finally admit the mistake and move on. Wow. I think Mohamed Diabate has looked great. I hope he makes the team. I have him making it. If they keep 6 linebackers, I think he's it. Ronnie Hickman has looked fantastic. I have him as the 4th safety spot. That might be a bit of a surprise for some people. That's over last year's sort of training camp surprise in D'Anthony Bell. And the last sort of big sort of surprise there, you'll see on the right side under cornerback. I think there are better free agents available out there than what we would have for that very last cornerback spot. I really like the former Chicago Bear Bryce Callahan as your number 5 cornerback. You know that the cornerbacks they have are a little fragile. So I'd like to see a lot of depth at that position and a lot of quality depth. And I think that signing would provide that depth. So I'm looking for those two free agents to come in after all these cuts have sort of been finalized. And I look to maybe make two additional cuts based on those free agents.
Man, David Bell really stands out to me. Of course, Cade York stands out, but David Bell, man, that would be a big surprise for me if he's no longer with the team. Eric, let's go to you here. A couple differences with Drew. How'd you break down some of these roster cuts?
Yeah, a couple differences, but a lot of similarities. I guess the first difference is I'm gonna assume that they're gonna go status quo with Cade York, but don't put that in pen. Put that in a nice number 2 pencil, and we'll see what happens in the next 2.5 weeks. But for now, I think they're gonna stick with York. We'll see what happens. Running back position, I got Demetric Felton as a third running back currently, but again, that's one where depending on what they want to do with the returner position, I could see him definitely staying, or I could see trying to get some like a Rashad Penny if he gets released, or Trey Sermon if one of the Eagles running backs gets released. I could see him being the third running back, bouncing Felton off the roster. But for now, I'm going to stick with him as a third running back. I do have 7 receivers which is an ample amount of receivers. Again, there's a lot of moving parts, but David Bell and Shaquem Grant, I do have as the last 2. Again, kind of goes back to that returner position. You saw Felton, what he did in preseason. He's been a little bit better than average, nothing special, but is competent at returner. Shaquem Grant was, pretty prolific last year until he tore his ACL. How he recovered and how he's performed is kind of hard to say because I personally haven't seen him. So, I mean, if he goes out there and plays the way that the team is expecting of him, then yeah, he'll definitely make the team. But it hasn't had a lot of opportunities this year. Again, going back to my podcast last week, I would like to see Marquise Goodwin. I mean, I guess if all things check out with his blood clots, I could see him taking Bell or Grant's spot, depending on what the team wants to do with that wide receiver position. Offensive lineman, I got 9 guys, pretty much a backup for everybody except for only one backup guard. But I have Nick Harris being a swing guard center combination, leaving Luke Whippler on the outside. It's kind of surprising for them to not keep a draft pick, especially on a rookie, but I expect him to be stashed away on the taxi squad, practice squad. So depending on how old you are, you get that reference. So yeah, I expect him to potentially still be with the club. I mean, there had been rumors of trading away Nick Harris and keeping Whippler, but that's kind of premature at this. So I'm going to assume they're going to go with the veteran and keep Whippler around and hopefully develop him for a backup role next year. Defensive line, I think it's the same as Drew. Alex Wright, Isaiah McGuire, defensive end. Both of those are, 2 guys that are just the last 2 on the roster right now. Alex Wright fighting an injury, so he's going to be on the roster, at least initially, in my opinion. We'll see what they do if they put him on the PUP or on the short-term IR. It's a knee injury, I believe, and I know he's going to be out a few more weeks. So they're going to have a decision to make there if they want to get some veteran who can, make an impact for a couple games and then, release him after Wright's back. That's an option. But for now, I'm going to go with Wright. I also have Muhammad $1 Million Man Ted Diabate for the linebacker. So I was really impressed with what he's been doing so far in preseason. He's been around the ball. He's been making plays, safeties, the Peanut Tillman punch, which I always appreciate watching him many years in Chicago about a decade ago. So we haven't had one of those type of playmakers on the defensive linebacker room in quite some time. I also think they're going to keep Tony Fields as the last linebacker. I think this is his last chance, last opportunity. He was a later round draft pick who was kind of a poor man's JOK. So this might be, again, his last opportunity. Maybe he could at least grab on at special teams. And then at safety, I got Ronnie Hickman and DeAnthony Bell both making it with 5 safeties. D'Anthony Bell, kind of the only reason I have him on there is special teams. So I think if they can find an upgrade and maybe a more useful cornerback that can also play special teams, I could see that spot going to that cornerback being brought in, which Drew had alluded to. But Ronnie Hickman, I mean, maybe I got the OSU bias, but he's been playing well in this preseason. He's got kind of looks like that natural ability of just finding the ball and coming down with it that we haven't seen in quite some time. I've been saying that a couple of times this podcast, which I don't like saying, but hopefully that means we're on the road to the right the road to the right players for this team. So couple surprises, but hopefully I think it's a lot of moving parts right now, but I think they're going to get the right 53 and be positive. So
yeah, if I compare these two, I think it's interesting to see if we go back, starting with Drew and just go back and forth here. Drew putting a little bit more. Let's see, this is the Drew version. This is the Eric version. Eric going with a little bit more wide receiver depth. Is this too many? Drew going a little bit more depth at corner, defensive line, just going with the 6 wide receivers. Both of you, though, DTR, staying with the team, not having him go through waivers.
No way, you can't risk it. You cannot. He will absolutely 100% get claimed. You cannot put that guy out on waivers for anybody to sign. You cannot do it. He's been way too impressive this preseason. There's no chance you risk that.
We will see. One more preseason game to go. Browns might already have their minds made up going into that final dress rehearsal before the regular season. We will see who stays with the team and who is going to face the Bengals in week 1.